Welcome to Luxury Stories 24/7, where every story is full of emotions, lessons, and unforgettable moments. Get ready for a journey of love, betrayal, and healing. Let the story begin. In a small, noisy part of Lagos called Ajagunle, lived a young man named David Johnson. David was 24 years old. He worked as a mechanic in a local car repair shop. He didn't have much, but he had something many rich people didn't have: honesty. He lived in a one-room apartment with his mother, Mama Grace, a kind woman who sold fruits by the roadside. Every morning, David woke up early, swept the compound, helped his mother carry her basket to her market stand, and then walked to work. Life was not easy, but he was content. He always believed that with hard work and honesty, life would one day get better. David's best friend at the workshop was a young man named Richard Banks. They grew up in the same area, went to the same school, and learned how to fix cars together. But unlike David, Richard was full of envy. He always wanted to have more money, dress better, and live big, even if it meant doing wrong things. One hot afternoon, a rich man named Mr. Williams brought his black Lexus Jeep to the workshop. Mr. Williams was a well-known businessman who owned several stores on the island. He told the shop owner that the Jeep was making strange noises, and he wanted it repaired quickly. The boss gave the job to David and Richard. David worked carefully, checking the engine, brakes, and wiring. Richard pretended to help, but his eyes were on something else. As David was fixing the engine, Richard sneaked into the car and opened the glove compartment. Inside, he saw an envelope filled with money. He quickly took it and hid it in his backpack without David seeing him. Later that evening, Mr. Williams returned. "Where is my envelope?" he shouted, searching his car. David was confused. "Sir, I don't know about any envelope." Richard stood quietly, watching the scene. Mr. Williams screamed, "There was $50,000 in this car. I kept it here. Someone has stolen it." The shop owner called the police. Everyone at the workshop was searched. When they got to David's locker, they found a small bundle of the money inside a bag. It was not all of it, just some, but it was enough to make David look guilty. David was shocked. "This is not mine. I didn't take anything. I swear." But nobody listened. Even the other workers started whispering. "He must have done it," one said. "People like him, always pretending to be honest." Richard kept quiet and looked down. Inside his heart he felt fear, but he was too proud to admit what he had done. The police arrested David. Mama Grace ran to the station crying. "My son is innocent," she shouted. "He cannot steal. He is all I have." But the officers pushed her aside. "We found money in his locker," one said. "He will explain himself in court." The courtroom was full. People came to watch the case of the poor mechanic who stole from a rich man. David stood in handcuffs, wearing a dirty shirt and trousers. He looked tired and sad. The lawyer said, "Your Honor, the money was found in David Johnson's locker. He had access to the car. There is no one else who could have done it." David tried to speak. "I was working with Richard. Please check the cameras. Check his bag too." But the CCTV camera in the workshop was not working that day, and nobody searched Richard's bag. The judge shook his head. "This is a serious crime. You stole from a man who trusted you. David Johnson, you are hereby sentenced to 10 years in prison." Mama Grace screamed and fell to the ground. "10 years? No, he didn't do it. Please." David turned to his mother with tears in his eyes. "Mama, I swear I didn't do it." They dragged him out of the courtroom. Amaka, David's childhood friend, ran to hug Mama Grace. She had always believed in David. Her heart broke as she watched him disappear in handcuffs. "I will not rest," Amaka said to Mama Grace. "One day, the truth will come out." Meanwhile, that night Richard sat in his small room. He stared at the envelope filled with money. His hands were shaking. "I didn't plan it like this," he whispered. "I just wanted the money. I didn't know it would go this far." He picked up his phone and dialed David's number, but it was switched off. He dropped the phone and cried silently. "I'm sorry, David." But he didn't confess. David sat alone on the cold prison floor. He looked at the dirty walls and the iron bars. 10 years, he whispered to himself. "For something I didn't do." One of the older prisoners laughed. "You look too fresh for this place. What did you do?" "I didn't steal anything," David replied. "Sure," the man scoffed. "Everyone here says they're innocent." David kept quiet. He knew that nobody believed him. Not the judge, not the police, not even some of the people in his neighborhood. Only Amaka and his mother still believed. Mama Grace stopped selling fruits. She was too weak and tired. Every day she sat at the window staring into space. "My son is suffering for something he didn't do," she cried to her neighbors. Some felt pity for her. Others just shook their heads. "Maybe he did it," they whispered. But Mama Grace never stopped praying. "God, please, if you're watching, let the truth come out one day." On his first night in prison, David lay on a wooden bed with no mattress. Mosquitoes bit his skin, and the smell of sweat and decay filled the air. Tears ran down his cheeks. "This is not how my life was supposed to be," he thought. "I wanted to open my own workshop, take care of Mama, and marry Amaka one day." He closed his eyes and whispered, "God, help me survive this. I'm innocent." Far away, Amaka sat in her room, looking at an old picture of her and David. "I'll wait for you," she whispered. "I'll wait." 10 years may sound like just a number, but for David Johnson, each day in prison felt like a full year. The smell of sweat, rotten food, and sadness filled the prison walls. Every morning the guards would bang the metal bars with sticks and shout, "Wake up, prisoners!" And every morning David would sit up and wonder how life changed so fast. He used to fix cars. Now he fixed broken chairs in the prison workshop. He used to sleep on a mattress at home. Now he slept on a wooden board with a torn blanket. He used to laugh with his mother and smile at Amaka. Now he barely smiled at all. At first, prison was like a nightmare. Some prisoners tried to bully David because he looked quiet and calm. "Look at the new chicken," one of them said. "He doesn't belong here." Another one pushed him. "If you want to survive, you must pay for protection." But David didn't reply. He had no money. He only had prayers in his heart. One evening, as two prisoners tried to beat David, a tall man stepped in. "Leave him alone," the man said in a deep voice. "He's under my protection now." The bullies backed away quickly. That man's name was Tunda Bello, a former soldier who had spent 8 years in prison for something he never spoke about. He saw something in David. Innocence. "Why are you here?" Tunda asked David that night. "I was framed," David answered. "I didn't steal anything." Tunda nodded. "Many people say that, but you really don't look like you belong here." From that day, Tunda became like an older brother to David. He taught him how to stay out of trouble, how to read the prison rules, and how to stay strong. Mama Grace, David's mother, grew older and weaker. She had no one to help her. The people who once bought fruits from her had forgotten her name. Every morning she prayed for her son, and every evening she lit a candle near his photo and whispered, "My son is innocent. One day, the truth will speak." She visited David once every few months. It cost money to travel and enter the prison, but she saved little by little just to see his face. "Don't give up," she always told him. "I believe in you." David would press his hand against the glass separating them and whisper, "I'll come home one day, Mama." Amaka never stopped believing in David. People laughed at her and said, "You're wasting your life waiting for a criminal. but she would reply, "He's not a criminal. You'll see." She started studying law at a college in Lagos. She wanted to understand how the justice system worked, how it could send an innocent man to prison without proof. Every few months she wrote letters to David. She would include photos, scriptures, and small jokes to make him smile. One of her letters said, "Dear David, I know the walls are cold and the nights are long, but I believe your light still shines. You may feel forgotten, but you're not. I'm still here. I'm still waiting. One day, the truth will come out. Love, Amaka." David read her letters over and over again. They were like medicine to his soul. While David suffered, the real thief, Richard Banks, was living free. After David's arrest, he left the car workshop and got a better job in a transport company. He used some of the stolen money to rent a better house, buy new clothes, and impress people. But his heart was never at peace. Every time he passed a police station, he felt his legs shake. Every time he saw a mother crying by the road, he thought of Mama Grace. At night, he had bad dreams. He saw David behind bars, reaching out and shouting, "Why, Richard, why?" Richard would wake up sweating. "It's been 5 years," he told himself one day. "I can't go back now. It's too late." But his guilt kept growing. Years passed. David became stronger, not just in body, but in spirit. He stopped waiting for justice and started making peace with his pain. He joined the prison church choir. He helped teach younger prisoners how to read and write. The wardens began to like him. One day, the prison director called him in. "You've been quiet and obedient," he said. "You even helped stop a fight last month. Good work." David smiled slightly. "Thank you, sir." Tunde, his friend, watched him proudly. "You're becoming a leader," he said. "Even here." David looked up. "But I'm not free." "You're freer than most of us," Tunde replied. "Some men are not in prison, but their hearts are in chains." When David marked his 8th year in prison, he felt something shift in the air. He knelt by his bed and prayed, "Lord, I have waited, I have cried, I have begged. If you won't give me justice, then please give me peace." 2 years later, 10 years since the day he was arrested, David was now 34 years old. He no longer looked like the slim mechanic from Ajagunle. His hair had some gray strands. His hands were rough, but his eyes were still filled with truth. That day, as he sat under a tree inside the prison yard, a small boy ran in with a paper in his hand. "David Johnson," he called. "The officer wants to see you. There's news." David stood up slowly. "News?" "Yes, important news." At the same time, Richard was lying on a hospital bed. His body was weak. Doctors said he had only a short time to live. The sickness had spread fast. He looked around the room. His family wasn't there. He had pushed everyone away. All he had left was regret. He whispered to the nurse, "Call someone. I need to confess. I need to make things right." "Who do you want us to call?" she asked. "Amaka," he said. "She's the only one who still believes in David." A letter arrives. The officer handed David an envelope. "What is this?" David asked. "A letter from someone named Richard Banks." David's hands shook. He opened the letter. The words hit him like thunder. "David, I don't know if you can ever forgive me, but I must tell the truth before I leave this world. 10 years ago, I stole the money from Mr. Williams's car. I put some in your locker because I was jealous. You were always better than me, and I was afraid of being left behind. I lied. I destroyed your life. I'm sorry. I've signed a full confession and told Mr. Williams the truth. If I die, at least let the truth live. Richard Banks." David dropped the letter. His knees became weak. Tunde caught him before he fell. "What is it?" Tunde asked. David looked up with tears in his eyes. "It's over," he said. The truth has finally spoken. David Johnson had received a letter. Not just any letter, but one that carried the truth he had prayed for during 10 long years behind bars. Tears rolled down David's cheeks as he read Richard's words again and again. He sat quietly under a tree in the prison yard, holding the piece of paper like a newborn child. It was both painful and powerful. The man who had destroyed his life had finally admitted the truth. Tunde, his friend and fellow inmate, sat beside him. "This is it," Tunde said softly. "This is what we've been waiting for." David nodded slowly. "But it's also hard. I don't know how to feel. I've suffered for 10 years, while he lived free." Tunde put his hand on David's shoulder. "Yes, he lived free, but not in his heart. You were in prison, but he was in guilt. Both of you were trapped." At a private hospital on the island in Lagos, Richard Banks lay on a hospital bed, weak and pale. The room was quiet except for the beeping machines beside him. His eyes were sunken, his skin thin. The doctors had done all they could. Cancer had eaten deep into his bones. Amaka, the one person he had asked to see, walked into the room. She looked at him for a few seconds before speaking. "I came because you said it's important," she said. Richard struggled to speak. Thank you for coming." "I almost didn't," Amaka replied. "You destroyed David's life." Richard gave a weak nod. "Yes, I did." "Why?" she asked, her voice shaking with pain. Richard looked at her with tears in his eyes. "Because I was jealous. David was always honest, always trusted, and I was always second. When I saw the money in the car, I didn't plan it, but I took it. I put some in his locker. I thought they wouldn't find it. I thought it would just disappear." Amaka clenched her fists. "But it didn't disappear. He went to prison. His mother nearly died from heartbreak. You ruined a family." "I know," Richard whispered. "I can't undo it. But I want to confess. Publicly. While I still can." Amaka quickly contacted Mr. Williams, the businessman whose money had been stolen 10 years earlier. He was shocked to hear from her. "Sir," she said over the phone, "David Johnson was innocent. Richard Banks has confessed. He wants to speak to you directly." Mr. Williams drove straight to the hospital. He had become a richer man over the years, but peace had left him ever since that day. Somewhere in his heart, he always doubted David's guilt. When he saw Richard on the hospital bed, he gasped. "Richard, is this true?" Richard nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. I took the money, and I blame David. I'm sorry." Mr. Williams was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. "I want a full video recording of this," he said to the nurse. "We must show the world." The nurse nodded. A small camera was brought in. Richard looked straight into the lens, his lips trembling. "My name is Richard Banks. I am the one who stole the $50,000 from Mr. Williams' car 10 years ago. I blame David Johnson. I hid the money in his locker. He didn't know anything. He was innocent. I was just jealous. I lied in court by keeping silent. He went to prison for my crime, and I've lived in guilt every day. I want to say I'm sorry to him, to his mother, and to anyone who ever believed in me." He paused and coughed. His chest ached with every breath. "I'm ready to pay the price. Please free David." Then he broke down in tears. The next morning, Mr. Williams went to the police headquarters with the signed letter and video recording. He also called his personal lawyer. "I need to correct a mistake," he said firmly. "We sent the wrong man to prison." The officers looked shocked as they watched the video. 10 years? One of them asked. Mr. Williams nodded. "Yes, 10 wasted years. We must fix this." They filed a special report to the Federal High Court asking for a re-examination of the case. David's name appeared on the news headlines that evening. New evidence shows David Johnson was innocent. Real thief confesses after 10 years. People all over Lagos began to talk. Is that not the boy they called a thief? So he didn't steal it? Chai, they put an innocent man in prison? God have mercy. David sat on a bench as the prison warden approached him. Johnson, he said, you have a visitor, and there's news. Big news. David stood up slowly and followed him to the visitation room. When he entered, he saw Mr. Williams, standing tall, but with sadness on his face. David, he began, I came to apologize. David looked surprised. Sir? I was wrong. I didn't listen. I believed the wrong things. Richard has confessed. He admitted everything on video. You're going home, son. David's legs went weak. He sat down slowly. I'm going home? Yes, Mr. Williams said, choking on emotion. Your name is being cleared. You'll be out within days. David's hands shook as he whispered, Thank you, God. Back at home, Mama Grace was in her small room, coughing gently, when Amaka ran in. Mama, Mama, she shouted with joy. It's happening. What is it? The old woman asked, sitting up. David is coming home. Tears filled Mama Grace's eyes. What? What did you say? Amaka hugged her. He's free. Richard confessed. David will be out soon. Mama Grace raised her hands and began to sing through tears. You are faithful, O Lord. You are faithful. The news reached everyone. Those who once called David a thief now hung their heads in shame. One man at the car workshop said, I judged him too quickly. I never even gave him a chance to explain. A neighbor in Ajagunle said, Mama Grace was right all along. That boy never had the heart to steal. Amaka was invited to speak on a radio show about the danger of false accusations and blind judgment. She said, This story should teach us all that justice must be based on truth, not assumptions. David lost 10 years of his life because we didn't ask enough questions. Richard lay on his hospital bed, surrounded by silence. The nurse said he had only hours left. Mr. Williams came to see him one last time. I've cleared David's name, he said. You did the right thing. Richard nodded weakly. Thank you. A few minutes later, Richard breathed his last breath. His eyes closed, and he left the world quietly. Though he had caused pain, he had also spoken the truth at the end. That truth would bring healing. Back in prison, David packed his few belongings, a worn-out Bible, letters from Amaka, and a small wooden cross made by Tunde. Tunde gave him a tight hug. You made it, brother. David smiled. I wouldn't have survived without you. Go live your life, Tunde said. Make the pain worth it. David nodded. I will, and I'll never forget this place. Not because of the suffering, but because I found strength here. The prison gate opened slowly. The metal groaned as if even it was tired of holding the innocent. David Johnson stepped outside carrying a small bag. Inside the bag were only 3 things: a Bible, some old letters from Amaka, and a pair of worn-out shoes. For a moment, David stood still. The sun touched his face. He hadn't felt that kind of freedom in 10 years. A guard beside him smiled. Go and live your life, David. This place is not for you. David nodded. Thank you, sir. As he walked forward, he saw Mama Grace and Amaka standing at the gate. Mama Grace wore a white wrapper and a head tie. Her hands were shaking with joy. Amaka had tears in her eyes and a wide smile on her face. David, they both shouted. Mama, David whispered, running into her arms. She hugged him tightly. My son, you came back to me. David turned to Amaka. They looked at each other for a long moment before embracing. I told you I would wait. she whispered. David smiled for the first time in a very long time. And I told you I would return. David entered his small family home in Ajagunle, and everything felt like a dream. The paint on the wall had peeled, and the ceiling leaked a little. But it was still home. He walked around slowly, touching the wooden chair his mother used, the calendar on the wall, and the family photo near the window. This place, it kept me alive, he said softly. Mama Grace brought him a bowl of hot yam porridge. I made your favorite. David laughed gently. I haven't eaten real food in 10 years. This will taste like heaven. They sat together as a family once more. 2 days later, Mr. Williams, the businessman whose money had been stolen, came to see David. He stood respectfully in front of David's house with his driver and a briefcase. Mama Grace, he greeted. May I speak to your son? David stepped out. Sir. Mr. Williams removed his hat. David, I am deeply sorry. I trusted the wrong person. I spoke too quickly. I helped destroy your name. David remained quiet. I came to ask for your forgiveness, Mr. Williams continued, and also to offer something. He opened the briefcase. Inside was N10 million in cash and papers. This is a check and a full compensation package, he said. I've also set up a workshop for you in Ikeja. It has equipment, space, and workers. I hope this helps you start again. David was speechless. Mama Grace placed her hand on her chest. God is faithful. David finally found his voice. I forgive you, sir. You believed what everyone believed. But thank you for doing the right thing now. Mr. Williams smiled. You deserve more, but this is a start. Within a few weeks, David's name was cleared in court. The judge issued a public apology and removed the criminal record from his file. People from across Lagos came to visit his new workshop, David's Honest Hands Auto Repairs. It was big, clean, and full of tools. David hired young mechanics from poor homes, giving them a chance to learn and grow. One day, a journalist came to interview him. What kept you going in prison? The reporter asked. David replied, Hope, and people like my mother and Amaka. They never gave up on me. He looked into the camera and said, If you're innocent, don't stop praying, and if someone around you is suffering, don't stay silent. The truth always wins, sometimes late, but it wins. Even though Richard caused David great pain, David still decided to attend his funeral. Only a few people were there. Richard had no wife, no children, and most of his friends had left him. David stood by the grave and said quietly, You hurt me, but I forgive you. You spoke the truth before the end. That takes courage. He dropped a white flower on the grave and walked away. That was the final goodbye to the pain of the past. David and Amaka sat outside his new home one evening, watching the sky turn orange as the sun set over Lagos. Do you remember what you told me in one of your letters? David asked. Which one? Amaka smiled. You said, Even if the world forgets you, I won't. Amaka touched his hand. And I meant it. David looked into her eyes. You stood by me, even when everyone called me a thief. Now I want to stand by you for the rest of our lives. Amaka blushed. Are you asking me to marry you, Mr. Johnson? David laughed. Yes, and this time no prison walls can stop me. She nodded. Yes, 1,000,000 times, yes. The wedding was small but joyful. It was held in a peaceful church in Lagos. Mama Grace danced happily with other women, shouting, My son is free, my son is married. David wore a simple suit, and Amaka wore a white gown with yellow flowers. Everyone clapped as they exchanged vows. When the pastor said, You may now kiss the bride, the hall erupted in applause. After the wedding, David and Amaka visited the prison. They brought books, toiletries, and food for the inmates. David spoke to the men. "I was once where you are," he said. "And even though the world may forget you, don't forget yourselves. Change is possible. And truth still matters." One of the young prisoners whispered, "Maybe I can change too." David stood outside his workshop, holding hands with Amaka. Mama Grace sat nearby, smiling in peace. The sign above the shop shined in the evening light. A boy passed by and stopped to read the sign. He turned to his friend and said, "That's the man who was in prison but didn't do anything bad. He's a good man." David looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, God. You didn't forget me." And with the wind blowing gently, the sound of engines and laughter filled the air. David was free, not just from prison, but from pain, shame, and the past. He had lost 10 years, but he gained a new life. This story teaches us that even when lies win for a while, the truth will always come out one day. David suffered for something he didn't do, but he stayed strong, and in the end, he was free. It also shows that jealousy can destroy lives, but honesty and forgiveness bring peace. Never stop believing in yourself, and always stand by those you love, just like Amaka and Mama Grace did. Thank you so much for watching this story on Luxury Stories 24/7. We hope it touched your heart and taught you something special. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing and emotional stories every day. We would love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments. What did you learn? What touched you the most? Until next time, keep showing love, stay kind, and remember, every story has a lesson.